Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ranger podcast. This is episode 7. Been a week. Haven't put out any videos for a while, and I apologize. It's been a pretty crazy couple of weeks here. You'll notice that the setting has changed a little bit. So, aside from being sick last week, the other reason that I didn't post a video was that I'm surprising my brothers and the rest of my family, really, by visiting home and not telling them I'm coming. So I have my youngest brother who just got back serving an LDS mission, and I surprised him at his homecoming today at the airport. And then I had another brother who was down in college in southern Utah who didn't know I was coming as well, and he watches the channel off and on, so I couldn't post a video here. He would recognize the table and the wall paint. So, and I was also legitimately sick. I could barely breathe, and was coughing and sneezing a bit and having to blow my nose about every 5 minutes. So if I had put out a podcast, people would have probably not appreciated that. So, and then just being home, it's first time being home since I got out of the Army, which is a little interesting and a little weird. You guys might get a room tour here of my old high school room that I am currently staying at with my parents. That really takes us right into one of the things I want to talk about today, just kind of being home and the energy that I'm kind of feeling being home, at the start of this new part of my life, even though I have been out now for about 8 months. Kind of like the energy I'm feeling, really discovering who I am outside of the Army and being in the room that kind of fostered and where I was living when I was preparing to join the military. Just the energy, like I can kind of feel the same kind of energy that I felt in high school when I was, preparing to join with my option 40 and training and mentally preparing myself to go into RASP and to serve in Ranger Regiment, because I knew that's where I was going to end up eventually. I was fortunate enough to get it on my first try, as most people generally are if they're not, halfway bad, or if they are, halfway decent rather. And just being back in this room and like seeing the artwork I've got up on the walls and like the stack of Tom Clancy novels and a bunch of other like SEAL books and Inside Delta Force, Killing Bin Laden, and like the type of books that I was reading and choosing to influence my mind and feed my mind with, and then having this channel like talking about, and bringing up memories from that initial start of my service. It's all kind of, rekindling that fire that I had, which I kind of needed, which has been great. Kind of the fire of, I'm going to do what's going to be good for me and, doing it for me, if that makes sense. So really just back to my roots kind of moments here, which is awesome. Kind of needed it. I was doing things when I was in high school. I've talked in my, which video was it? It was the goal setting, or like the visualization video back in September that I shot at the beginning of September. How I had my folder of pictures of Rangers and like Ranger Regiment and like, trucks I wanted to drive, whatever. Like that's where this happened, was this room. And I would sleep on the ground for part of my senior year. I was sleeping on the ground with a poncho liner on a yoga mat. And I think I allowed myself a pillow, but I was like, I'm going to be hardcore and I'm going to sleep on the ground. And I did that for probably most of my senior year, I think up until track season. And that's when I realized I probably needed to sleep in a bed to allow my body maximum rest. And people might hear that and think it's kind of out there and crazy, which, yeah, it might be, but it's like, most people aren't going to do that. And it's these little, mindset, I'm not going to call them mindset hacks, but these little self-imposed austerities that you might find yourself doing on a path of, joining the Army, trying to get into SOF, or, any kind of self-imposed challenge, doing like, cold showers, which I also did as well after sleeping on the ground all night. So my general day would be like, wake up, scroll through my folder. And then there was a couple, like there's cool Ranger edits that people do. I would watch like one or two of those, the same ones every morning, get up, cold shower, get ready for school, go to school. And that's how I woke up almost every single day my senior year, just totally laser focused on my goal to get into regiment. And when you're going after these lofty goals and aspirations, you're going to be finding yourself doing these kind of things that most normal people don't do and might scoff at. And are they necessary? Probably not. Like, it probably didn't make or break, me getting into Ranger Regiment, the fact that I slept on the ground, throughout my senior year. What it did do was get my mindset right. So in a way it did. And I'm not telling you, if you're in high school, start sleeping on the ground. Like, no, like, you need to just find mental and physical challenges aside from the personal training that you're doing, like, the running, the push-ups, the weights that you should be doing, the rucking. You need to find the other little things that are difficult for you, and that overcoming those will give you an advantage and a mindset advantage over the long run. I hope that makes sense. Again, yeah, kind of out there that I was doing that, but hey, it is what it is at this point. So yeah. And just being back in this room, just thinking back to the mind, where my mind was before I joined, so I come from an LDS upbringing. I mentioned my brother just came back from an LDS mission, Mormon, for those of you that don't know that acronym. And, my family is extremely religious, which is great. I'm not super religious myself right now. And generally, I was the oldest in the family. And generally, the path for most Mormons after they graduate high school is, hey, you're going to go and you're going to serve a mission for 2 years somewhere, and then you're going to come back and start college and the rest of your life. And, growing up, like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do, but that's kind of what I was being told that I was wanting to do. But once I found, the passion and my desire to go and join the Army, I was okay, and I was comfortable enough, telling my parents, like, hey, like, no, this is what I'm going to do. I know it's hard for you to hear that, but this is what I want to do, and this is what I am going to do. Like, I brought the recruiter home. I think I've mentioned in my other podcasts, when I was 17. It was like the beginning of October, like when the fiscal year was running over, because I had been reading stuff on the forums like, hey, fiscal year turns over and like new contracts are available. So if you want to get your option 40 contract, like, you got to do it in October. Like, it's the best time to do it. So not sure if that's true or not. Because my recruiter wasn't able to get one, I had to go all the way up to MEPS for the MEPS recruiters to be able to get it for me. But I had my parents sign the delayed entry, being able to sign up when I'm 17 paperwork, because that's what I knew what I wanted to do. And it wasn't real for them. They still thought that somehow I was going to serve a mission and then join the Army. But I was like, no, you haven't been listening to me this whole time, and this is what I want to do. So once that happened, they finally kind of realized, like, okay, he's serious about this, and they're supportive. They were supportive of it. I'm not saying this to speak ill of my family, because they've been supportive in all of my endeavors. But for the people out there that have, maybe someone telling them, like, don't do this, or like a spouse maybe that's like concerned about you doing and following a course of action, your first test is going to be, can you have the gumption and the thinking of a good word for it here, the balls, the intestinal fortitude to be able to tell, the people that are going to try and put a damper or try and change your plans and try and make your plans more in line with what they want out of you. Are you going to allow that to happen? That's your first test, is if you can effectively navigate that and stay true to what you want to do way deep down. So that's kind of just my 2 cents here. So just being back home and like kind of being my roots has been good. And it's been a good, fresh, change of pace for me after busting my ass for the past 8 months, past 10 months really, since the beginning of January, making and selling rigs, and haven't really had too much of a break to fully kind of process kind of being out. So that's my motivational talk for the beginning of this podcast. Next week, probably going to shoot it this weekend, actually. But I'm going to talk to my brothers, and we'll see. The first guest might be the three of us on the podcast here in my room, which will be cool. We get to meet my brothers. We've all kind of had some interest in filmmaking. We've all shot short movies over the years with each other, and posted content at some point or other. My brother Josh, he's got a like an music edits channel that does pretty well. He can't monetize it because he's using copyrighted music. And then Ben, the younger one, I think he had a Vine was his thing when Vine was a thing, and he had a good following on Vine. He's was getting into music mixing and editing. So we're not strangers to like kind of making stuff and posting online. So I think they'd be a good first group of dudes as a guests on the podcast. And then I'm gonna have another former Ranger on the podcast. I'm not going to say who just yet. We're still hammering out the details, but that'll be filmed and recorded probably next week as well towards the end. So that'll be like first week in November when that gets posted. So keep an eye out for those kind of little teasers for the future. Plan on hitting the range here in Utah at some point, probably either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday. And there'll be a non-podcast video about that. So I know I've got a lot of requests for gear and questions as well. I've been doing my best to hit these responses to people's questions in the comments and stuff. So just keep them coming. I am kind of busy at home here, catching up with a few friends, and then working on some copywriting for a couple of my clients, and then working on another project I'm not ready to talk about yet, but one day. So I'm pretty busy here. But I'm gonna try and get back on the wheel of making content for y'all, because it is enjoyable, and I know you guys want to see more. So today we're gonna finish out the podcast, the rest of the time here, and we're gonna talk about stories from when I was a private and kind of like what it was like for me showing up to regiment. And I think this will be helpful for a lot of dudes, is kind of giving like maybe another point of reference, point of information, because honestly, for everyone it's different. Everyone's private experience is going to be a little different, but there's going to be a few key similarities. It's really going to depend on who you are as a person. Like if you're quiet and kind of nerdy, but you're really good at working out, you're going to get forced to come out of your shell pretty quick. Like I was a pretty quiet dude, and pretty sheltered growing up, as grew up LDS as previously mentioned. So wasn't super savvy to the ways of the world. And on top of that, being fresh out of high school. So it was a huge culture shock for me showing up to regiment. And I showed up during MLAT, so multilateral aircraft training, where basically you jump into airfields. And that was my first training event, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had my gun built for me, and I got shown how to use my PVS-15s, and then we were doing MLAT, and didn't have to jump combat equipment because it was going to be my first jump in MLAT. And then I think I ended up having to jump combat equipment for the battalion mod. But anyways, the first one of my, I won't say fondest, but I guess one of the more iconic kind of private type stories, aside from the push-ups you do when you first show up and you don't know anything, you don't know your airborne rangers in the sky. Luckily, I feel like I'm a pretty adaptable person, so I was able to kind of pick up on stuff and get stuff done without making a complete ass of myself, and that saved me from getting scuffed up too hard in the beginning. It also helped that we were going into MLAT, so everyone else was running around with their hair on fire. Our battalion mod, we actually took CV-22s to some airfield. I think it was in Florida, Avon Park maybe, not too sure. But being the private, I was going to be the newest private specifically. We had two other privates in the squad. And being the new one, they're like, all right, you're carrying the litter. I was like, all right, cool. Generally we carry the Talon 3 on a Alice frame with a couple aid bags underneath, and then like straps modified to hold the Talon 3. So not the most comfortable setup in the world, and ours was pretty ate up. I don't think it ever got really repaired during my time. It was still kicking when I left, the same frame, but I digress. So we were doing cold loads out of a CV-22, and I heard someone say something about leave your litter on the bird. We're just doing this for training. Like you don't need to, carry it on and off. For those unaware, cold loads is when you have the aircraft and they're all parked, and you just practice getting on and off and getting into PZ posture. So, like a semicircle around the back, or, a almost staggered column where you're facing opposite directions, just for control of personnel at the helicopter landing zone. And so we're just practicing getting on and off, like untethering from the floor, like seeing how the load is, seeing if we need to like scratch people from the manifest, like who needs to sit where, who needs to get off first, kind of thing. And I think it was maybe one of my tabs that told me to do it, or I heard something wrong, but I left my litter on the bird. And we get out and we get in PZ posture, and my squad leader is the first one to get back on the bird, and he sees that I left the litter, and he's like, "What the fuck, all red?" And he chucks it at my head, like full force, like double hand over his head, chucks this at my head. He's like, "You never fucking leave your litter on the bird." And common sense, but it's like, I think someone told me to do it, but I'm not sure. I'm just gonna, catch it from hitting me and Roger Sergeant and do my push-ups, and never left gear on a bird after that. Another, classic Ranger experience that's it's kind of going away. They're kind of like, hazing is bad and making your privates fight is hazing. But I remember there was a couple private fights that we had. I think this was EIB, so like a month after my MLAT experience, and we were out doing the land nav course, and in between iterations, after we eat our MREs for the day and we're kind of just hanging out, like it turns into tabs being tabs and making privates fight each other. So did a couple of those. I wasn't a great fighter at the beginning. I didn't have a wrestling background or any kind of background, so got my ass beat pretty good most of the time, unfortunately. Before I learned a few basics to at least make it somewhat of a fair fight. And then ball ups as well. So there's one in particular that I'm thinking of. And also when I was a private, I think probably the month after EIB, I want to say it was May of 20, I don't even remember the year. I was a private, doesn't matter. And another team leader I was in first squad, and a team leader from second squad was sitting in our squad leader's chair at the back of the cage. When you're a private, you think all the team leaders, just dicks, and like they only care about their job. And then once you get to that point, you're homies with all the other team leaders, and you like to fuck with each other using your squad. So this other team leader was sitting in the back, sprawled out during lunch, in our squad leader's chair, and my team leader was like, not cool with it, but he was wanting to fuck around. So he brought the privates in. He's like, "Hey, you have to ball him up." Now this team leader wasn't like an ordinary team leader. He was about 6'5" and 280 pounds, always the casualty during live fires and in training, because it was always funny for the OCs and the guys grading the event to watch people try and move this massive man around. And there was 3 of us, and 3 of the privates. We had 2 tabs, and their job was to defend the cage from the other team leader's squad when inevitably he called for help. And so we go in, we lock the door, and we have the lid, and we're like, all right. And it took about a half hour to even get him halfway onto the litter. This dude was fighting hard, and we had some pretty solid, the other private. There was 2 other privates, like I mentioned, and one of them's big dude, about 230 pounds, I want to say, from what I remember. And the other guy was a pretty big dude as well, a little bit shorter than me, but he was about 200 pounds. And I was a little small private at the time, so I was about probably 180 pounds. And it took all 3 of us, everything we had, to try and hold this man down. At the same time, his squad is literally ripping our lockers apart to get into the cage to save their team leader. And one of the tabs was inside the cage with us, and he just had a broomstick, and he was just jamming it blindly out towards the other privates and tabs that were trying to rescue their team leader. And this went on for about a half hour to 45 minutes of just complete pandemonium in first squad's cage. And I think I got hit a couple times in the face. I remember this team leader grabbed my fucking left pec and just twisted as hard as he could. Bruised me up pretty good, but I don't think we ever got him onto the litter. Like, we were trying to get him flex cuffed. I think we got him strapped down, but we weren't able to get him flex cuffed. And he was biting. I think he bit one of the other guys too. So it was just complete, shit show. But classic Ranger event there is the ball up. So you got that to look forward to. Doesn't happen nearly as much. Generally, it happens for people's birthdays nowadays, if it happens at all. But it's hazing. It's not professional, but it's that kind of stuff that builds your fighting spirit. If you can't have fun fighting your buddies, like how are you going to have the aggression to take it and to do it to an enemy? Is basically my 2 sentence defense of why you should be able to ball up people in a regiment, which you can't do anymore. At least not as openly. And then just go driving to and from the range. I know that 275 and 375, their ranges are pretty much close to their barracks and their compounds, but with 175, like the only range we have on Hunter Emery Airfield is a 25 meter, 50 meter rifle pistol range. Maybe it's 100 meters. Pretty sure it's 100 meters, but complete pain in the ass to open and close, and you can't really do a whole lot on it. So we'd always have to drive out to Stewart, which is about a 45-minute to an hour drive, depending on which range you were going to. And as a private, you're sitting in the back of the bus, you have all your gear in your lap, like everyone's packed in tight. You got all the range stuff in the back, the range box, the targetry, water MREs. It's all just kind of back there. And the whole way out, you're getting fucked up. Like you're doing push-ups. It was rare that it was on the way out, actually. It was usually on the way back if the range went poorly or people got bored and were tired of work. And so on the way back, at night usually, all the privates would be down doing push-ups and singing Ranger songs, singing, the national anthem at the top of our lungs, whipping around these back roads on Stewart. All the seats are taken up by our feet because we're elevated doing push-ups, screaming Ranger songs at the top of our lungs. And it sucks in the moment, but then you look back when you're a tab or, team leader, and you're like, man, that was silly and that was dumb, but that was really fun as a private. And it's like honestly, like the shitty days like that you kind of remember and honestly kind of miss once you get out, or like once you, make it to a certain rank where it's the shitty days aren't nearly as fun. It's, more planning, paperwork, and counseling, and not the fun kind of stuff like doing push-ups and singing dirty songs. So I think that's about all I'm going to talk about tonight. It's late. I meant to film this a lot sooner today. I did it in one go. I don't think I'm going to need to edit this, so it's going to go up. It's going to go live here momentarily. I do have these on Spotify and Anchor. I need to update. Don't think I've put the last 2 up just yet on those services. But if you prefer to listen to it and you don't want to watch me talk, I have those available, and go subscribe, I guess, on that as well. But appreciate you all watching. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their week. Follow me on Instagram. I changed my handle. I'm gonna have to go back and re-edit all of my descriptions now because my link is now updated. But go follow me on Instagram at @DZachRed down in the description below, and I'm gonna try and be a little bit more regular posting there. Maybe not pictures, but more so stories and memes. So if you like that kind of stuff, then go follow me there. But that's about all. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate all my subscribers. We're close to 3,000. We slowed down a little bit because I stopped posting. That's okay. But once we hit that 3,000, I'll do some kind of 3,000 subscribers special. So let me know what you want to see for that. That's it. Appreciate everyone again. And have a good one.